Hello friends, in today's video we are going to deal with the poem The World is Too Much for This. The poem is written by William Wordsworth. Before we should deal with the poem, we must take a little snapshot about the poet itself. The poet is known as the founder of Romantic poetry. Romantic poetry here means the poetry written without any restriction for its forms or the subject matter it deals with. William Wordsworth, along with his friend Coleridge, published the Lyrical Ballads in the year 1798, and it had changed the course of English poetry. Before Romantic poetry, the subject matter of the poem could only be the prince, princess, king, kingdom, god, and goddesses, and not the subject matter of day to day life. After publication of the Lyrical Ballads, the Romantic poetry or the Romantic movement in the poetry began, and it implies that anything that stimulates human mind, that makes impact on human mind, can be the subject matter of the poem. So therefore, the poems without any restriction for its subject matter or form is called as Romantic poetry. In the same book, the Lyrical Ballads, he defined poetry as a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. He gives importance to feelings and emotion and not to the subject matter like god, goddesses, prince, or princely kingdoms, which were prevalent in the earlier poems. In his poems, we often find his attachment with nature, and very often the primary subject matter of his poetry is the nature itself. For him, the nature is a mother, a nurse, and a teacher. This poem is also a concern about the nature. Let's talk a little bit about this poem. The World is Too Much with Us is one of the most popular sonnets. It is meditative and less stress on going back to nature. Here, meditative means to think deeply about our relationship with the nature, and it stresses to go back to the nature. In this poem, the poet laments, regrets the evils of the materialism which have made man insensitive towards the beauty of nature. The poet expresses a distaste for contemporary civilization. He dislikes the industrial civilization in which we are surrounded with a lot of equipments and machines, and therefore we do not take interest in nature. And further, he praises nature worship. So here the two different thinkings are there. One is our love and engagement with the industrial products, and other one is the nature itself. Here poet chooses at the end of poem the nature worship. So when you talk about this poem, we must consider the form of the poem, the way in which this poem is written and recited. This kind of poem of 14 lines is called as sonnet. It's a lyric of 14 lines. Literally, it is a little song which reflects upon a single sentiment, that is, single emotion, with a clarification of turn of thought in its concluding lines. So, when we come to the end of this lyric, of 14 lines, we must have something different than what the poet talks throughout the poem, and it is thus achieve some conclusion to the problem discussed in the poem. There are many different types of sonnets, but here in this particular sonnet we find a Petrarchan sonnet. It is perfected by the Italian poet Petrarch. This kind of sonnet divides the 14 lines into two sections. An 8-line stanza, which is known in literature as octave, and which rhymes AB, BA, AB, BA, and a 6-line stanza, which is called in literature as sestet, rhyming CD, 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 or with a variation it could also be CDE, CDE. When we will read this poem, keep in mind to manage with this rhyme scheme, to calculate this rhyme scheme. Here is the text of the poem. Before we should deal with the poem with the line by line and thought by thought, we must read the entire poem. And here is the audio available on livriox.org in a public domain. So I am going to play the audio. I request all of you to read the text along with this audio to enjoy the music of this poem.
The World is Too Much With Us by William Wordsworth. Read for LibriVox by Elizabeth Klett. The world is too much with us. Late and soon, getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Little we see in nature that is ours. We have given our hearts away, a sordid boon. The sea that bears her bosom to the moon, the winds that will be howling at all hours, and are upgathered now like sleeping flowers. For this, for everything, we are out of tune. It moves us not. Great God! I'd rather be a pagan, suckled in a creed outworn. So might I, standing on this pleasant lea, have glimpses that would make me less forlorn, have sight of Proteus rising from the sea, or hear old Triton blow his wreathed horn.
So, friends, as we talked about the rhyme scheme, let's realize it. When we listen to the audio of this poem, we must have experienced the rhyme scheme. How do we calculate rhyme scheme? We consider the sound that appears at the end of each line and ascribe an alphabet for that. For example, in this case, here we have sound no, soon, and here prayers. Sound sir is here. If you look at the next one, you will find repetition of sound sir, hours, and here sound no, boon. Now this corresponds to this and this corresponds to this. We ascribe A to sound no and B to sound sir. You would find again the sound sir is repeated here, and so is sound A is repeated here. So in this way, A, B, B, A. As we have already discussed, this is a sonnet, and in a sonnet, a single emotion is described. So let's read the first 4 lines and understand what is the sentiment of the poet. The poet says, the world is too much with us, late and soon. So, what do we gather from these lines? The world is too much with us. The world has given us everything that we can ask for. The nature has bestowed a lot of things that we live on. By the end of this line, we come to these two words, late and soon. Late is past and soon is present. So the poet wants to tell us that the world has given us, or the nature has given us, too many things in the past, that is late, and in the soon, that is even in the present. And what is our response to that? According to poet, getting and spending. We get it and we spend it. We lay waste our powers. We cannot justify cannot justify whatever is given by the nature to us, and this is how we lay waste our powers in consuming whatever the nature has given to us. The reason given for that is, the writer says, little we see in the nature that is ours. We cannot see in the nature that is very much ours. Rather, we have prioritized, given preference or given importance to something else over the nature. What is that? He says, we have given our hearts away. Rather than giving our mind to the nature, seeing into the nature, we have given our hearts away. For what? A sordid boon. This is a very important term, a sordid boon. A boon is something good that is bestowed by some powerful person. But if something good is given to you, can it be a sordid? Sordid is ugly. So you cannot have something good and ugly at the same time. Here, this kind of arrangement of the word is called as oxymoron. A sordid is ugly, boon is good. What must it be? He is referring to the industrialization, over commercialization in the world. So according to the poet, we give more importance to the industrialization, to the machines, and we do not see in the nature that is very much ours, that has given us too many things to enjoy in the past and in the present also. So this is how in these first four lines he has introduced the emotions, the problem with the current human civilization. Further, he says, now he explains what the nature has given to us. In when we talk about too much with us, what the nature has given to us. He says, the sea that bears her bosom to the moon. He talks about the open sea and the open moon that can be enjoyed by human being. Further, he says, the winds that will be hollowing at all hours. We seldom listen to the sound of the wind as well, as we are as we prefer to remain in our houses and enjoy the machines rather than listening to the sounds of the nature. Further, he says, and are upgathered like sleeping flowers. All this, the sea, her bosom, the moon, the wind, everything are upgathered now like a sleeping flowers. Look at that image now, sleeping flowers. We like flowers blooming and not sleeping. Here again he talks about sleeping flowers, because if we do not pay any attention to all these natural things, it is like worthless thing, like a sleeping flowers. Further, so we do not enjoy all these things. Further, he says, for this, for everything, we are out of tune. This is very, very important, that we do not enjoy the sea, the moon, the winds, the sound of the winds, and everything that can be enjoyed is going in vain, like, that is simile is used here, like a sleeping flowers, as if the flower that can be enjoyed, that can be praised, if that is not in use, that goes waste. Similarly, all these things, natural things, go waste if you do not pay any attention to it. And therefore the writer says, for these, all these things, whatever that nature has given to us, we are out of tune, we do not enjoy it, and we are too much engaged with our machines and industrialization. Now if you count the lines, you would find the number of lines and then the rhyme scheme. For example, line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. This group of 8 lines, as we have seen earlier, is called as octave. Group of 8 lines. What is the rhyme scheme of it? A, B, B, A. Again, sound no here in N. So, A. Sound S is repeated here. So, B. S is repeated here. Again, B. And N is repeated here. So, A. Look at it. Soon, powers, hours, boon. Moon, hours, flowers, tune. A, B, B, A, B, B, A. And this is how the octave has a consistent rhyme scheme. Now, let us consider the next 6 lines, which are known as sestet. These 8 lines have present us a problem with current human civilization, that humanity today do not pay enough attention towards the world that has given us, or the nature that has given us too many things to enjoy. Now let's see what is the emotion and how does it conclude at the end. In the further 6 lines, the poet says, it moves us not whatever is given by the nature, and our engagement with machines does not move us. And therefore he further says, now, great God, I would rather be a pagan suckled in the creed outworn. Now he is moving towards a possible solution to this problem, and he says, his praises to the God, he says that, great God, I would rather be a pagan suckled. Pagan here is a group of people in olden days which used to worship nature and not any other form of a god. So he chooses to be a pagan suckled in a creed outworn. Look at this word, creed outworn. Here creed stand for a sect of the people, a group of the people. Outworn is outdated. So though the nature worship is outdated, he would choose to worship the nature even if people call him outdated. And therefore he is making a request to the God that he should be, if this kind of problem continues with the humanity, he would prefer to be a pagan. And he gives the reason for that. He says, so might I, if he had chosen that, what would happen to him? So might I, standing on the pleasantly, he would be standing there pleasantly. Lee is an open space full of greenery, and which would inspire our mind. We might have experienced that if you visit any natural place lonely, if you walk for some time and if you sit there, you would find yourself inspired, emotional by the nature itself. Sometimes you feel like crying, sometimes you feel like laughing. This is how nature interacts with us, and therefore the poet also chooses here to go there and stand there on the pleasantly the open space. And further he says, after a comma he says, have glimpses that would make me less forlorn. Forlorn here is lonely. Again here we can find paradox. Two opposite things are put together. So I might I standing on this pleasantly lonely. He wants to go there lonely and enjoy the nature, and he says that I would make it would make me less forlorn. I would be less lonely there. As why? As the nature would be interacting with him and not the machines or the human beings who prefer the machine over the nature. Further he says, now we come to the conclusion. As in the earlier introduction to the sonnet, we have already seen that by the conclusion there is some kind of solution to the problem which is discussed in the poem. So further he says that he would be standing there on a pleasantly open space and get the glimpse of something that would make him less forlorn or lonely. What is that glimpse of? He says, have a sight of Proteus. Proteus is a Greek god of sea. Proteus rising from the sea, and at the same time, or hear the old Triton. Triton is a kind of conch and which has been used by the gods in Greek mythology. Blow withered horn, and he would be listening to the horn of the sea. So he would be enjoy the nature there, the loneliness in the nature, the interaction with the nature, and also the sea rising to seeing him or visiting him and listening to the Triton blown to withered, blown for him. So this is how he want to enjoy the nature. He want to see the god of sea. He want to see the god in nature rather than getting engaged with the machine and industrialization. In this way, if you look at again the rhyme scheme and the structure, you would find here we can give section, let us say for C, D, again C, D, E, B, won, Lee, forlorn, old, and horn, again D. It must be C here at the end, so it is C here. C, D, C, D, C, D. This is how this sonnet ends. Now in first 8 lines, which is known as octave, we have a problem. Let's count the lines: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. We have these 6 lines, and in these 6 lines you would find the answer to the problem which is discussed in earlier lines. Okay, so this is how this group of 6 lines is called as sestet. In the earlier 8 lines, we have problem at the hand that humanity today prefer industrial products, industrialization over nature. And in this next 6 lines, in the current 6 lines, we have solution to that problem, that the poet chooses to be a pagan, the worshipper of the nature, where he wants to stand alone and want to see the glimpse of God itself in the sea, in the forlorn and lonely places. This is how this sonnet can be discussed. Now let's move. We have to remember certain things. Let's discuss them. First thing, what is the theme of the poem? What do you think is the subject matter around, or what is the single sentiment that is discussed in the poem? That the poet is concerned, the answer of this question is that the poet is concerned about distaste of human being for nature, the very nature that has given human being so many things to enjoy. He has raised his concern over this and also have given us a solution in the form of being pagan or worshipper of the nature and looking into the nature rather than giving preference to the industrialization. As when we deal with the poem itself, I had already explained this term of sordid boon. So sordid boon is combination of two words which are exactly opposite to each other. They do mean opposite to each other. Sordid is something ugly, boon is something good. So what must it be? It is industrialization. Industrialization has done wonders in our life. It has given so many machines and comforts to us, so our life becomes easy. At the same time, it has taken us away from the nature, and therefore we do not enjoy the nature. That is why it is sordid. And again, there are so many problems with the nature that industrialization had done, like pollution, for example. So therefore it is a sordid boon according to the poet. Now, next thing that we must remember is that for what, according to the poet, we are out of tune. There is a list of things that the poet has given in the poem, like the sea who bears its bosom to the moon, the sounds of hollowing wind, and everything that we can enjoy in the nature. We are out of tune. We do not enjoy those sounds, those sea, and those moon, because we are too much engaged with industrialization. Therefore, we are out of tune with the nature and we cannot enjoy the nature itself. The next things to be remember is what will make the poet less forlorn and why. In the sestet, by the end of this sonnet, the poet says that he would be less forlorn when he would be standing on the open field, when he would be in the laps of Mother Nature. And it is so because he can interact directly with the nature. You want to see the sea rising. You want to listen to the horn of Triton, or rather, you want to listen to the sounds of the sea. You want to interact with the nature. And whenever he finds himself alone, that is forlorn, in the nature, he finds less forlorn because he interacts with the nature and nature also interacts with him. So therefore he says that standing on a meadow, standing on an open field, looking at the sea would make him less forlorn because he can interact with the nature directly. Now, one more thing that we must remember is this poem is a sonnet. This particular sonnet is a Petrarchan sonnet. This is just a revision. It divides the lines into 14 lines into two sections, and 8 line stanza, that is octave, rhyming A B B A B BA, and these 8 lines depicts a problem. The problem at hand is that because of growing industrialization and our engagement with it, we do not enjoy the nature. And then a 6-line stanza, which is known as sestet, which rhymes as CD, 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 depicts a possible solution. And what is the solution given by him? That turning into a pagan, though it is an outdated fashion to worship the nature, he would prefer to go and worship the nature, standing alone in the open field and enjoying the sounds of the nature, looking at the sea and finding the god of sea coming out from that sea by blowing his horn. So thank you guys. In the next video or online session, we will be dealing more with question answers on the world is too much with us. Thank you.